I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on simple verb tenses. And before we start with our lesson on simple verb tenses, we're going to log into aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts, grade 6. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of simple verb tenses. All right, so our chapter is simple verb tenses. Our subject is English language arts, grade 6. And the lesson that we are focusing on under the chapter of simple verb tenses is irregular past tense, which is going to be a review on that, and then simple past, present, and future tense. All right. So when it comes to your tenses, right? So firstly, before we go to our tenses, a verb is a doing word, right? It's an action. So a verb is a doing word, it's an action. And when we specifically talk about tenses, right, then usually tenses is either in the form of, is it in the present tense, is it in the past tense, or if it's in the future tense, right? So which means that if we join these two words of verb tenses, then it's almost like the action that is being done within the present tense, in the past tense, and in the future tense. So most of our verbs, right, they are regular in the past tense. And when we say that the verbs are regular, right, then it means that we are saying that they are following a specific rule, right? Like for example, if we say you either add an ed or you add a d to a specific verb to get the past tense form of the verb, right? So that is where most of the verb when our verbs are basically regular, right? Then like I say, we there's rules that we basically follow, or there's a specific rule that you follow where we would either say, okay, just add d or add ed to get the past tense form of that specific verb, right? Like for example, if we look at an example, it's like saying walk, right? Walk is something that you're doing now, but the if we want to show the tense in the past tense, if we want to see the action in the past tense, then it means that we are going to add ed to the specific word, and then it's going to be walked. So now it means that walked is going to be in the past tense. Another example would be maybe where we say jump, right? Jump shows the present tense, but in the past tense, we will say I jumped. So which means that we added ed, right? That is why we say the verb is regular or the verbs are regular and it follows a specific rule like adding ed or adding d to get the past tense form of that specific verb. But now, some of the verbs are also irregular, right? So they are irregular in the past tense, meaning if we say that they are irregular, then it means that they do not follow a specific rule. They don't follow a rule. So which means that the word can change. The whole word doesn't necessarily change, but there's certain letters in that word would maybe change. So this means that you don't follow a specific rule, and you're just gonna have to remember what the different form is or what the tense is of that specific verb. So you're gonna have to remember the past tense form of that verb. So instead of saying we're going to add ed to the specific word, it's not going to be like that, right? Because you can't just add ed or you can't just add d to the word when it comes to the irregular past tense. For example, Louis did his homework, right? So Louis did his homework. And so if we look at the word did, right? Did is the action, right? So Louis did his homework. So the word did is the irregular past tense form of do. So can you see how the word changed from do, which is in the present tense, to did in the past tense, right? So which means that we didn't just add ed or we didn't just add a d to show the specific tense. Right? And then when it comes to our different tenses, right? I said when it comes to tenses, and then our tenses are more like it's either you have your present tense, you have your past tense, or you have your future tense, right? And before we continue, we are doing our tutorial lesson on aplusstudents.ca. All right. So when it comes to our different tenses, right? I said that when it comes to tenses, it is either the action being done in the present tense, in the past tense, or in the future tense. So if we make mention of the past tense, so if we think about the past tense, right? The past tense verb, it tells you about something that has already happened. So which means that if something happened already, then it means that that is in the past. So the past tense verb, it tells you about something that has already happened. So which means that when it comes to the past tense, we just add an ed to form the past tense of that verb or the past tense of most of the verbs. So we either add an ed or we add a d. If a verb already ends in e, So if the verb already ends in E, then it means that we are just going to add a D. You see, that is where it comes in, where we say we either add a ed or you add a D to the specific verb to show the specific tense. And if you add ed, and if you add and if a verb already ends in E, like we say, we just add a D. All right. So then, if a verb also, right, ends in a short vowel or a single consonant, and a short vowel, remember our vowels are A, E, I, O, U. So if the verb ends in a short vowel and a single consonant, then we double the consonant before even adding ed. And if a verb ends in a consonant, which is Y, then we change the Y to an I before even adding an ed. So it's going to be IED. And if we look at an example, right? We watched the game. This is now in the past tense, right? We watched the game. And if we identify the verb, right, in the past tense, and then we can say it is watched. And as you can see, there we have our ed. We watched the game. Or another example is the audience clapped loudly. And there we have our verb, which is clapped loudly. Another example is this is now where we say this one where it says Alex qualified. This is our word qualify. That is in the past tense, and this is in the present tense, qualify, right? But in the past, Alex qualified for the finals. And we said that if a verb ends in the consonant Y, here's the consonant Y, then we change the Y first to I before we add the ED. So these are basically, let's say, our regular verbs. We can say these are regular verbs because they they follow some form of rule because they basically tell you what to do, right? And remember, we said that when it comes to your verbs that are irregular, then it means that we don't follow a specific rule. You're just going to have to remember the past tense form. For example, Peter ate the last cookie. And the present tense of this word ate is eat. So as you can see, from eat to ate, it's as if the words have been jumbled, right? So the changed. We didn't add ed, we didn't say the y falls away and we add ied, or we just added d. They kept busy all afternoon. So kept, right? And the present tense of kept is keep. And there we have kept. So as you see how the wording changes. So which means that in our past tense, right? The past tense verb, it tells you about something that has already happened. And we add ed to form the past tense of most verbs. And if a verb ends in e, then we just add a d, right? And the example that we made over here with Alex qualified for the finals, right? That means that if our verb ends in a consonant y, which is like qualify, this is the present tense, then it means that we drop the y, and this y basically turns into an I, and then we just add the ed. Then we add the ed. So that is a rule that they are actually telling us to follow. All right. Then we have the present tense form, right? Then we have the present tense verb. And the present tense verb tells you about something that is true or is happening now. That is in the present. It is something that is happening now. The fact that you are either watching or you are listening or you are writing or you are sitting, that is something that you're doing now, right? It is something that is true or is happening currently, which is now. And the present tense form of a verb, they need to agree with the subject in number, meaning how many people or things that we are talking about. So, for example, singular subjects, right? Singular subjects, they go with singular verbs. So, a singular subject meaning that we are talking about one person, one animal, one thing, right? So, singular subjects, they go with singular verbs, a singular action. And in order to form most singular present tense verbs, we basically just add an is, right? So to form most of the singular verbs, we add an is. And if the verbs either end in sh, ch, s, x, or z, and then we basically add an es to it. And for the verbs that ends with the consonant y, we change the y to the I and we add the es. And we're going to show you an example of that soon. For example, snow falls outside my window. So which means that in with our present tense verb, instead of saying snow fall outside my window, we added the s because it's a singular subject. So we say snow falls outside my window. Dylan, who's one person. Remember, we have a singular subject goes with a singular verb. So Dylan washes the dishes. We don't say Dylan wash the dishes. We say he washes the dishes because it's a singular subject that goes with a singular verb. And now here it comes to this one. It says Susan carries, right? There we have that word which is Carries. So it's like carry, right? But we're saying she carries the boxes to her room, which means that here we say that for the verb that ends with the consonant Y, we change that Y to an I and we add ES. So that it becomes carries. Susan carries the boxes to her room. And a plural subject, right? I and you, they go with plural verbs. So we say plural subjects goes with plural verbs, singular subjects goes with singular verbs. And when it comes to the plural subjects, right, they have no ending. For example, we are doing the chapter of simple verb tenses. So the subject of simple verb tenses. All right, so we said a singular subject goes with a plural subject, which is I and you, they go with plural verbs, and that has no ending, right? For example, ice cubes, which is more than one, they float. So we don't say ice cubes floats. Ice cube float in water. Remember, ice cubes are countable things. It's things that you can count. Because if you look at this word, snow, and you're asking yourself, like, but snow is a lot, right? But remember, snow is something that you cannot count. So, snow you cannot count, and that is why we classify it as a singular subject. But anything that you can count, right? Like ice cubes, more than one, we basically then it's either you classify it as it being singular or it being plural. You look nice today. So we said that plural subject, which can be I and you also. So you look nice today. We don't say you looks nice today. You look nice today. And two verbs are irregular in the past tense, which is to be and to have. And you're just going to have to remember their forms, right? And then also we have the future tense verb. Then we have the future tense verb. And the future tense verbs, right, they tell you about something that is going to happen. Remember, things that is in the future did not happen yet. So which means that it is going to happen. And when it comes to our future tense verbs, right, we just add the word will. So when it comes to our future tense verb, we just add the word will to form the future tense of all of the verbs. For example, the boys will finish later. Tanya will speak at the conference. I will pass grade 6. I will pass all my chapters, right? So the future tense verbs, it tells us about something that is going to happen. And all we do is we add will to form the future tense of all of our verbs. Right? So we said when it comes to simple verb tenses, our verb is an action. Our tenses either means it is in the present tense, past tense, or future tense. And in the present tense, it tells us about something that is true and is happening now. In the past tense, it shows something that has happened already. And the future tense, it tells us about something that is going to happen. Right? All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca. And we're going to irregular past tense review. And we say that most verbs are regular in the past tense. That means that we have to follow a rule like adding ed or d to the past tense form of a verb. And if some of the verbs are irregular in the past tense, then it means that you do not follow any rules. Instead, you're just going to have to remember the past tense form of the verb because the wording kind of changes. For example, after a long, cold winter, we awake. This is now the past tense. We awake one morning to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of lilacs in the air. So after a long, cold winter, do we say we awake, which is in the past tense, one morning to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of lilacs in the air? So which means that if we have to complete the sentence with the verb in the past tense, then we say we awoke. Because wake is basically to woke, so awoke. Oopsie. So we awoke one morning to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of lilacs in the air. Right? All right, let's go to our test where we are going to go over irregular past tense. We need to complete the sentence with the verb in the past tense. I bring Rick home to meet my family. But now that word bring, right? If it's in the past tense, does the word stay the same as in I bring Rick home to meet my family? Or do I say I brought Rick home to meet my family in the past tense? So in the past, do you say I bring Rick home to meet my family or I brought Rick home to meet my family? So is it option one or option two? All right, so if we complete the sentence with the verb in the past tense, all right, then we can say I brought Rick home to meet my family because that shows the past tense. So well done, brought is correct. The guest conductor, do we say stride to the stage or the guest conductor strode to the stage, bowed to the audience, and then turned to face the orchestra? So the guest conductor stride to the stage, bowed to the audience, and then turned to face the orchestra. Do we say stride or he strode? All right, so if we choose the correct verb in the past tense, we're going to say strode, and strode is correct. So we need to complete the sentence with the verb in the past tense. After the American colonies declared their independence, 55 men, do we say undertaken or undertook the difficult task of writing our country's constitution? So undertaken or undertook. All right, so we will say it is the second option because he took or undertook, right? So well done. The ugly cut on my finger, do we say bleeds or bled quite a bit? But my doctor reassured me that it would heal without stitches. So the ugly cut on my finger bleeds or bled quite a bit, but my doctor reassured me that it would heal without stitches. All right, so we're going with the second option, which is bled. And that is correct. So well done. All right, so now we're going to a simple past, present, and future tense. And remember, we said that the past tense, right, it shows something that happened in the past or things that happened already or has happened. In the present tense, it shows things that is happening now or that is true now. And in the future, it tells us about something that is going to happen, right? And with the future tense, we just add will in front of our verb. For example, it says, if you weigh ingredients using an electronic kitchen scale, your measurements, this is now in the future tense, right? Remember in the future tense, we said we add will in front of our verb, right? So if you weigh ingredients using an electric kitchen scale, your measurements be basically more accurate than they would be if you use a mechanical scale. So which means that if we were to complete the sentence with the future tense form of the verb, then we are just going to add will in front of that word be. So which means that we will say if you weigh ingredients using an electronic kitchen scale, your measurements will be more accurate than they would be if you use a mechanical scale. So when it comes to will, or when it comes to the future tense, then we add will in front of our verb, right? When it comes to the past tense, we either add ed or we add d to show the past tense, and that is regular verbs. You're just going to have to know when it comes to irregular, you're going to have to know the verb, right? Or the form of the tense. And then when it comes to the present tense, you're either going to have to remember if it's a singular subject, goes with the singular verb, and a plural subject goes with the plural verb. All right, so now let's go to our test. So we need to complete the sentence with the future tense form of the verb. The forecast is calling for colder temperatures later this afternoon. So the precipitation, do we say will turn or turn to snow? This is now in the future tense. So the precipitation will turn or it turn to snow. So we need to choose the correct form in the future tense. All right. So if we complete the sentence with the future tense form of the verb, remember we said that when it comes to the future tense, it's things that will happen, which means that we add the word will in front of our verb. So it will turn to snow. So well done. During hibernation, an animal, this is now in the present tense form. This is complete the sentence with the present tense form of the verb. During hibernation, an animal decreases or decrease its body temperature and breathing rate. So during hibernation, an animal, it's one animal, do we say decreases or decrease its body temperature and breathing rate? And this is in the present tense. Remember, we said when it comes to the present tense, then you need to ask yourself, is it a singular subject that goes with a singular verb? And if it is so, then we add an S. And if it's a plural subject that goes with a plural verb, then we don't add an S. It's just ongoing. So here it says during hibernation, an animal decrease its body temperature and breathing rate. All right. So which means that if they say during hibernation, an animal, right, refers to one, it's just, and usually if it refers to one, then we need to add an S. So they decreases, right? Because remember, one animal refers to it being singular. So decreases is correct. But well done for trying and well done to the other one. All right, one last one. If Brenna, this is now, we need to complete the sentence with the future tense form of the verb. If Brenna doesn't leave now, she will be or she been late for her doctor's appointment. So if Brenna doesn't leave now, she will be or she been late for her doctor's appointment. All right, so if we complete the sentence with the future form of the verb, and then we will say, Brenna doesn't leave. If Brenna doesn't leave now, she will be late for her doctor's appointment. And will be is correct. So well done, everybody. All right, so that is the end of our lesson on simple verb tenses. And remember, I said that when it comes to simple verb tenses, verbs, it shows the action, and tenses usually shows the action that is in the present, past, or future, right? Present tense shows things that is true and happening now. The past tense shows things that has happened already. And in the future tense, it shows things that will happen, right? Or it needs to still happen. All right. So well done, everybody. So thank you very much for joining our class. Thank you very much for interacting. I really hope that you have a more deeper understanding of what simple verb tenses are. So this is now the end of our lesson. Have a great evening further. Goodbye.